Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Half-Faced Blades Disaster Folder, which is a button lock integral. Interesting. It's also made in the United States. This is rare. We do not see USA-made integrals. Why? Because it's expensive to do. Now, this is an expensive folding knife, but I'll tell you guys, the price is pretty impressive. There was a time, like a while back, a lot of you might remember the Benchmade Anthem. Now, at the time, and partially because it said Benchmade on it, people flocked to complain about the price of that thing. It was an integral, and it was also made in the United States. If I remember correctly, it was somewhere in the low 400s, perhaps even right on 400 or slightly below it. And people absolutely lost their minds over that price. How could that possibly be worth $400? If a USA-made integral were made today, in 2023 for $400, I don't know. I'm not sure. That would be like the collapse of society. People would be celebrating the fact that we had the opportunity to buy one of those, right? So this isn't quite there, but still, versus the competition, this is one of the least expensive USA-made integrals that I have seen in a very long time. So I've had this for a while, and I've been kind of scratching my head over it because I just wasn't. Initially, I was like, is it really made in the USA? And after talking with a lot of you and a lot of other people that I generally communicate in the knife world, I found out that yes, it is. It's made in the United States. So that's really cool. This is a past generation. They're on to their Gen 2, which has a few upgrades. I will link their page right down below so you guys can check that out, but I just wanted to make sure you guys understood. The newer version has Magna Cut steel and a number of other things. Maybe at some point I'll get one of those to handle, but I still wanted to talk about this today because more people need to know about this. This knife just flew completely under the radar for so many people, including me. So I want to thank my local buddy, Taryn, who I actually got into knives, but he introduced me to this knife, and I knew who half-faced blades were, but I didn't know about this. So I want to thank him for loaning this to me for months so that I could do a video on it. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's get some measurements here. I want to try and speed through specs because I want to talk about this thing. Overall length of the Disaster Folder coming in at about 8 1/8. Blade length is coming in a little bit over 3.5 inches. It's like 3.55. Cutting edge is coming in at about 3 1/8, maybe 3. Yeah, it's less than 3 1/4. There's a big sort of choil area there. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2? So you can see here that this guy definitely is closer to the size of the Rat 1. How about up against the Demco AD 20.5? There we go. How about up against the, let's move these out of the way, Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Once again, closer to the larger guy here. And then finally, how about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Benchmade Bug Out. Definitely closer to the size of the Ritter Hogue. How's the action? Well, Taryn uses this knife. He was like, I had no reservations against using it. I mean, it was expensive, but I use it. And he said when I got it, it was really stiff and then it loosened up. He said you might want to keep playing with it and see if it loosens up more. It has. And it says on their website, please allow for a break-in period. Sometimes that's nonsense and sometimes it's not. In this case, it is not nonsense. They really meant like, hey, you got to let this break in. Apparently the parts are nitride coated. So this is not a DLC coating or a PVD coating. This is a nitride coating. I don't know. I mean, like I'm not a specialist when it comes to how finishes wear in, but I do know that this is a common coating that's used on parts that move or slide against each other, at least as far as I'm aware. So, according to the website, this is by design, and it's so that parts wear in instead of wear out. I would venture to guess that that's accurate. I mean, at least so far that's been the case here. The other thing, the other major indicator here is not only has it gotten smoother, it has maintained its solidity. There is no movement whatsoever. So this is a US-made integral. It's a US-made integral button lock, and it has no play after obviously being, Taryn obviously used this thing because there are nicks and rolls in the edge. But there's no movement whatsoever. I really thought, I was like, okay, that thing's going to have play. Like, give me another 1,000 flips or whatever. But yeah, I push the button and it drops. What's acting as the detent is, it's a plunge lock. And it works. I'll let you guys take a look right here. Right, there's enough there that it's a detent, right? The flipper tab, it's smooth enough to where now it's reliably flipping out without any wrist. When Taryn gave this to me, it was still needing a little bit of wrist, but this does work. I would call the detent medium or medium, maybe even medium light. It's weird because the breakaway on this feels crisp, but it's like there's still enough right here. There's enough tension that the blade is not wanting to swing so far. It just feels tight. It doesn't feel like anything is wrong with it. It just feels tight. And I have to imagine that their idea here was we want this to break in functionally. We don't want this to get all loosey-goosey, right? The benefit of an integral is that you have far less moving parts. You have far less fasteners. You have far less parts in general. There's no need for standoffs or a backspacer here. There's no need for body screws. So that's nice. And so there is an ease of maintenance over time. There is an element of utility to that. So adding in, a smooth break-in period while maintaining solid lockout, I think couples with that really, really well. So it's fine. I'm sure if I continued to play with this and use it for, a few months, it would get better and better and better. But as you can see here, it's plenty good. It does work. It's not quite the same, like the ProTech Malibu where it's just swinging or anything. It's not quite the same thing there. This does feel a little bit tighter, but not in a bad way. It's kind of like how the Sebenza feels tight. It's smooth, but it's tight. Does that make sense? All right. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is about the same. Really, it's not a super duper thick knife. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. Close. This guy is definitely shorter than the PM2. It's definitely longer than the Para 3, though nowhere near as tall as either. Truthfully, it's a pretty darn good profile. Materials. What are we looking at here? I forget what they call this. Whatever the coating or the finish is here, I think it's actually anodized. This is like a very gunmetal-y, almost like it's like the exact color code where bronze and gray meet. If you could go down the slider, imagine you're customizing a car in Forza, and you go from brown or bronze down to gray, right? You just keep removing saturation from it until it gets to here. That's kind of what we're looking at, and it looks really good. I really like the colors here. The titanium nitride coating, or I assume it's titanium nitride. I think they have it listed as nitride coating. I think it's nitride. I'm honestly not sure. But it's sort of this gray black to light gray bronze look. And it just, man, I am a big fan of this color. It's like an army gray. I don't know. It looks like the color that a tank would be, right? Which kind of adds to that. This really looks American, right? If you're from another country and you look at this knife, I don't know. Maybe I'm just full of crap, but this looks USA to me. There's, I don't know, being somebody who was born and raised in the USA, I recognize quality from all corners of Earth, right? Even when, there are tons of people who don't like manufacturing in certain corners of the Earth. I would be silly to just pretend that those qualities don't exist in their manufacturing. That's silly, right? But I do have a bias towards, a really good-looking American product, especially when it's high quality. And so I am very much attracted to this, and I look at it and I'm like, God dang, that is freaking cool, man. It looks good. So anyways, a titanium integral frame. On this version, we have S45VN, which I honestly don't know if it actually says anywhere, but I know that that's the case. I have the information over here, but the newest version of this is coming in MagnaCut. Now, I don't know how they're heat treating this stuff. I would have to assume that they're doing a decent job, but I don't know, right? I didn't find it listed anywhere on their website, and that could be because I just didn't dig far enough. You may be able to find it, or you may be able to just email them, right? But if their manufacturing quality is any indication of their, desire to get things right, then I would, have good faith in them. So on this version, S45EN titanium. On the new versions, S40 MagnaCut and titanium. I don't know if this is a typo or if they're serious. They list the pocket clip as aluminum, at least on the Gen 2s. I don't know that I've ever seen an aluminum pocket clip, and I don't think that would really be the best choice. I think it should be titanium. Maybe that it's just a typo. Or maybe it really is aluminum. I don't know. I think I would rather have a steel clip than aluminum. It's hard for me to tell because this is it is a thick clip, right? So I don't have any other equipment to be able to test that, but the clip might actually be anodized aluminum. Wait, let's take a look at the inside real quick here. Do I have my flashlight in the same place it always is? Nope, I put it up here, that's right. No milling on the inside, just a little bit of milling on the back, right? Little holes there. Weight on this gent. We are coming in at under 5 ounces. I mean, hey, I don't know about you guys. An under 5 ounce full titanium integral. I don't have anything to complain about there. I mean, that's fine. Ratios aren't going to be perfect, but it's an integral, right? Do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. That pivot looks like a T8 to me. There we go. Oh, here we go. You guys got to see it just to make sure. So we have a T8 pivot. Yep. Obviously no body screws. The pivot is captive, at least on the newest versions. I remember reading that. We have a T8 pocket clip screw. And look at this. On the other side, I kind of like how they did this. It's a filler tab, but they didn't just do like a tab. They made a little triangle. And that's neat, right? I don't think it looks bad at all. It kind of matches the position of the button, right? So you have this kind of balance in the aesthetic. And that's it. Taking apart an integral is usually pretty simple. You just take the pivot out and you take the blade out, and that's all you got to do. And then you can clean out the bearings if you need to. You usually don't have to do that. Usually just compressed air. You can use warm water and soap and then blow it out and then add some oil, protectant, and you're good to go. But if you need to take it apart, it's super simple, which is why I like integrals. A lot of people get confused and think that it's designers and manufacturers trying to trick people into thinking that their products are more durable than a simple sandwich or pillar construction. No, that's assuming you're reaching way out there in fantasy land. The idea behind an integral is ease of maintenance. Yeah, sure, you could say, it's less likely to fail because there are less pieces holding it together. But really, the main idea here, because we're not throwing our knives as hard as we can against brick walls. I mean, there's no task that requires that, right? In that case, I would imagine that the integral would survive better because it's one piece of titanium. But realistically, it's just less things to deal with when you need to do maintenance. And there are less things to back out. That's the nice thing. There are no body screws to back out. You don't have to worry about that, right? It's just the pivot and the pocket clip screw. So great. Anyways, blade stock thickness. Let's measure that here real quick. Blade stock thickness is coming in, if we can get that zeroed out, 140,000. So not a thin blade, but not an overly thick blade. I think it's decent. Have we done everything? We've weighed it. We've done the hardware check, all of that. Let's talk about the meat and potatoes here. Ergonomically, it's pretty darn good. This is not contoured. I mean, and that's one of the indicators there. I learned talking with a few different people about how much the machines that are able to contour titanium are super expensive. And a lot of times that's when questions get raised, when someone is claiming, this is a US made product, and we see like really, really contoured, like ultra precision, ultra shaped titanium or other materials. a lot of times eyebrows get raised there because not only is the equipment expensive, but you just don't normally see it as often. A lot of times you see that with Chinese manufacturing. If you're new to the knife world, that might really surprise you. What? I thought Chinese knives were junk. Yeah, just like any other country, you have junk stuff and you have really high precision stuff. But over the last decade, I would say in particular, Chinese manufacturing has just gotten through it's unreal what they're able to do, right? So when we see that level of machining, especially on titanium, and it's like ultra perfect, it's really hard for some people to go, it's hard for people to trust that it was actually made in the USA. So this is one of the indicators here that this really is made in the USA. It's got chamfered edges, but it's flat, at least for me. Listen, everything I'm saying makes it sound like this, what I'm using here to determine is like a definitive way to do this and I'm a professional. No, I'm just going by what I understand. I don't want to give off the impression like I know and everybody should be using this same test to determine, because there are American companies who have the equipment that's required for contouring titanium, right? And they're well established, and it's been proven that they make this stuff. But sometimes with some companies that are lesser known, right, there's just less information. When that kind of thing happens, sometimes it raises eyebrows. In this case, this is flat, heavily chamfered. We have some milling lines in here, right? There's nothing here that suggests that this is not made in the United States, right? Everything, every last bit of information that I've come across, everybody I've talked to says, yes, these are USA made. So, you can understand why I'm careful with that stuff. But at this point, this is part of the reason why it took me so many months to get this out. All signs point to, yes, this is made in the United States. So I'm happy to put this out here now. It looks really good too. It's all precision done. Nothing feels sloppy. The only thing I don't like is they've clearly milled this clip to remain above the titanium. I don't like that. I like it to be pinched against the surface of the frame. It just makes me feel a little bit better about having it in my pocket so it doesn't slip out, right? I do like the little bowls. The little bowls in here, the way that they've milled this, I think it looks really, really nice. This area back here is always, it seems like with designers, they're like, do we leave this flat and plain or do we put a pattern on here, right? I'm currently designing my own integral, and that is definitely something that I keep going back and forth on. Do I want to put a texture pattern back here? Do I want to do something, or do I want to leave it plain? I think they did a good job here. I think this looks really, really good. I don't have an issue. Flipper tab is just a rounded nub, which works really well. The button is not a simple, just a round button. They made it sort of more teardrop shaped, which is cool. It adds a little bit of personality there, right? The thumb studs, they're okay. They're a little sharp. They're a little short. You have like a couple of steps, and then you almost have like this peak right here, which is not the most comfortable thing in the whole world, right, with bare hands, but you can reverse flick it and forward flick it. It works. I think the flipper tab is the most comfortable way to deploy it. It just needs to have a slightly heavier detent, or it's the plunge lock acting as the detent. There needs to be a heavier pull away, I think, but it does work. This is, again, blade shape police ready with their handcuffs. You're never going to catch me, right? I've got a bunch of them always been chased. They've been chasing me for years. They're never going to catch me. I'm going to keep mislabeling blades for as long as I live. This looks a little bit reverse Tanto-y for me. Oh, arrest him! Stop right there, criminal Scott. This looks reverse Tanto-y to me. We've got a flat here that runs out about 80% the length of the blade or so. Nice big swedge. And not a lot of room to drop down to the cutting edge. So we do have a fairly thick cutting edge. And again, Taryn's been using this, but the edge will cut. Some nicks and rolls in here, not really that big of a deal. S45VN is, in my opinion, one of the best, general user steels out there. And MagnaCut appears to be too, when it is properly heat treated. So either way, whatever version of this you end up with, you can't really go wrong. Little bit of some curvature and some inconsistency in the final cutting bevel, but not a lot. It is very subtle, and I'll let you guys look. Really, the weirdest area is just right back here. It almost looks like an accidental micro recurve. Everything else, though, this edge is straight. Everything else, though, out to the tip, honestly looks pretty darn good. I think this area might have slightly more variation, maybe just right here in this curvature here. Please excuse the leftover fingernail polish on my fingers. from my daughter. I almost told you guys the story about that. She was the game we were playing was that she was a princess and I was hideous, and she had to help me with that. So she was painting my fingernails. But yeah, I think the blade overall looks pretty darn good. The nitride coating will not hold up the same way as DLC, so don't expect it to. It will provide a slight increase in corrosion resistance as far as I understand. And I think I don't think it creates quite as much drag as DLC, so maybe there's a little bit of a benefit there. Overall though, the blade does have a great working profile, and there is a nice little choke up area right here that is complemented well by the jimping, the little thumb ramp back here, so that's fine. There is no lanyard hole, darn. Lefties and righties can enjoy this, which is really great. The only time lefties might need to worry is when you are choking up, but even then, the button has a decent amount of travel. You'd really have to be deliberately pushing down on it. So I would be cognizant of it, but I wouldn't worry too much. No blade play. Absolutely freaking solid, man. Like that, as soon as I felt that, I was like, oh man, you gotta be kidding me. That's great. They managed to do that. No pivot lash. This is manufactured well. It's just tight. It's tightness. It's not at all gritty or bad action. It's just tightness, which tells me eventually, by the laws of physics, it will wear in. That's just what's going to happen. We live in a finite universe. This is going to wear in, right? And it, honestly, I've never felt a plunge lock act like this. It's an actual click. It's not a, it's usually like, you can feel the metal sliding off of the ledge. Now, the thing is centered too. Hold on, let me look at it in my light. Yeah, it's centered. Oh man. What do these come in at? I think Taryn said he bought this for under 500, but this was, I think, a year or two ago. The upgraded version comes in at 500. Now that's a lot of money. Let's not pretend here that's not a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a pocket knife. You are in pocket knife enthusiast territory there. But let me remind you, people who are getting their paragraphs ready, you're getting your presentation arguments ready, right? I know the default response is to assume that the knife world is full of people who don't understand that utility can be bought for less than $50, or in some cases less than $20, and that these companies surely must be, confusing everyone and pulling smoke and mirrors to convince everyone that $500 is a necessary price to pay for utility. You better get your cape on and go to the phone booth and change into freaking knife community Superman to save everyone from this terrible blunder. Sit down. We all know that you can buy utility for less than $50. You're not teaching or informing anybody. That is an idiotic, knee-jerk response. If you're new, that's what you do. No, overpriced. They pull their freaking vest open. It's got a big B for Bill, or SW for Spaghetti Wizard. Chill out. The people who are buying these things are not new people. They're people who have existed in this knife world for years, sometimes decades. You don't go, well, one day I found myself buying a Kershaw from the Walmart display case. Next thing I knew, I was buying a $500 Integral just because, well, I assume it must be $500 better. I don't know any better, but I had $500 burning a hole in my pocket, so I thought, why not? That is nobody. People will jokingly describe their journey as evolving that fast, Next thing I knew, I was buying an expensive knife, but you don't go on that journey blind. You learn what it is that you're buying and why you're buying it. At this territory, you're buying things on an enthusiast level. This is enthusiast territory. So a lot of these elements that absolutely do have costs associated with them when we're talking about manufacturing, right? A lot of these elements are non-utility, which people who climb this ladder find that utility is not like it's not a holy grail thing. General utility and functionality can be found by throwing a rock in any direction. Literally, in 2023, the formula for utility is not a mysterious thing. You don't have to go talk to some bushcraft wizard that's been existing, in the jungle for 25 years and has unlocked the secrets of blade geometry and utility. No, you can literally just go and buy something off Blade HQ because we figured out basically which blade steels, which geometries work better or worse for certain things. It's just common knowledge now, right? You don't have to be a level 100 freaking bushcraft wizard to understand this, despite what the level 100 bushcraft wizards would have to say about that. People who are buying this stuff understand that these elements, largely, a lot of them are non-utilitarian. Does that mean that you don't get utility out of something like this? No, absolutely. You absolutely do get utility out of something like this, but it's more of a pride of ownership thing, right? Absolutely. US made integral, we don't see those very, very often. It's cool. That adds cool factor to it, right? On top of that, this is precision manufacturing. It's got a good look to it. It's got great functionality. I wish the action would break in a little faster. I'm certain that it will. I also wish the detent was a little heavier, what's acting as the detent, right? But all in all, this is pretty darn impressive. So, at $500, I'm not saying that that's not expensive. I want to make that very, very clear because people will aggressively miss the point. No matter how much I over-explain this, people will aggressively miss the point. At $500, this particular knife does not have a lot of competition when we're comparing apples to apples. Show me another US-made integral that functions this well, right? Made the same way. I'm not talking about a simple titanium frame lock. I'm talking an integral. This thing is kind of unique, which is, it's interesting that it, for people like me, it just flew under the radar. I really like this. If you're like, I've just been holding out for a US-made integral, go with this. Like, this is pretty darn good. Let it break in. This really does feel like a tool. Feels like an extremely well-made tool, right? But it's got those elements that your buddies might not appreciate, right? Your other knife guys who are kind of like, they like the CRKTs, and that's fine. They like the lower end Kershaws, that's fine, right? This has elements they may not appreciate or even understand. But you will, and you'll love it for that. And this thing will last forever. I mean, like, it really will, unless you're doing something stupid with it. You could buy a fixed blade and it'd last forever. You could, but I'd rather have something like this that's got a little more cool factor to it. I got a lot of respect for half-face blades. I wish I'd have known about this a lot sooner because I just find this to be extremely impressive. This has gone on for almost 30 minutes here, but I knew this was going to be a long one. I had a lot to say about this. I recommend this knife. Obviously not to everybody, but if you are looking for an integral knife and you're big into the USA thing, this is incredibly well made and it's very, very impressive. So it's going to go on my recommended knives playlist for sure. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.